In the dead of winter, 1959, a vast and unforgiving wilderness awaited. Deep within the Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union, a landscape of endless white stretched toward a frozen horizon. This was a place known to the indigenous Mansi people as Kholat-Syakhl, or the Dead Mountain. It is a name that would soon earn a chilling new significance, whispered across the globe for decades to come. In this remote and desolate expanse, far from the reach of civilization, a group of 9 experienced hikers embarked on what should have been a challenging but manageable expedition. They were young, strong, and prepared for the brutal cold. They never returned. Their disappearance would become the opening chapter of a story that continues to baffle and horrify. What happened to the Dyatlov group defies simple explanation. When search parties finally reached their last known location, the scene they discovered was not one of a simple hiking accident. It was a tableau of sheer, inexplicable terror. The hikers' tent, their only shelter against the sub-zero temperatures and howling winds, had been deliberately sliced open from the inside. Footprints led away from the relative safety of the camp, down a treacherous, snow-covered slope, into the blackness of the forest below. There was no sign of a struggle, no evidence of another party, and no logical reason for 9 seasoned mountaineers to abandon their shelter in such a desperate, panicked state. The initial findings raised far more questions than they answered. The mystery only deepened as the bodies were eventually found. They were discovered scattered across the area in small groups, some nearly a mile from the abandoned tent. Several were found barefoot and dressed only in their sleepwear, despite the lethal cold. While some had succumbed to hypothermia, as one might expect, others had suffered injuries so catastrophic they were more consistent with a high-speed car crash than a fall. They had crushed ribs and fractured skulls, yet their bodies showed almost no external signs of trauma. One victim was missing her tongue. The evidence painted a confusing and contradictory picture, one that investigators could not piece together into a coherent narrative. Logic, science, and common sense all failed. Decades have passed since that fateful night on the slopes of the Dead Mountain. The official investigation was closed with a vague and unsatisfying conclusion, citing a compelling natural force as the cause of death. But this explanation has satisfied no one. The case files were classified for years, fueling rampant speculation about what truly transpired. An avalanche? A secret military weapons test? An encounter with something beyond our understanding? A simple tragedy twisted by time and rumor? The Dyatlov Pass Incident remains one of the most disturbing and perplexing unsolved mysteries of the 20th century. The mountain keeps its secrets, and the night no one can explain continues to haunt us. The group was led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old radio engineering student from the Ural Polytechnical Institute. He was a gifted, resourceful leader, known for his meticulous planning and quiet confidence. This expedition was his vision, a journey designed to test the limits and earn the highest certification for sports tourism in the Soviet Union. Dyatlov wasn't just a casual adventurer. He was an experienced Category 2 hiker. He had a deep respect for the unforgiving nature of the mountains. He had assembled a team of his peers, all sharing his passion for the outdoors. They were not reckless youths seeking a thrill. They were serious, dedicated students of the wilderness. Each member brought their own skills and spirit to the collective. Zinaida Kolmogorova, a vibrant, determined 22-year-old. She was known for her resilience and often broke trail through deep snow. She had a history with Dyatlov, a past romance turned into a respectful friendship. Beside her was Yuri Yudin, the 10th member of the expedition. He was 24 and suffered chronic health issues, including rheumatism. He was determined to push through, but the mountain would have other plans for him. This team was a mosaic of personalities, each one contributing to the group's strength. They trusted each other implicitly. Lyudmila Dubinina, just 20, one of the most spirited members. She sang along the trail and kept a detailed diary of their adventures. Alexander Kolovatov, 24, a student of nuclear physics. The quiet, steady hand who handled repairs and maintained their gear. Rustam Slobodin, 23, an engineering graduate. The athlete of the group, strong and dependable. These were not strangers thrown together by chance. They were a close-knit circle of friends who had hiked together many times. They documented their journey with a shared camera, capturing laughter against the stark white Urals. Georgy Krivonishenko, 23, a construction foreman with a playful side, often seen with his mandolin. Nicolas Thibault Brignol, 23, a civil engineering graduate. His French ancestry gave him a slightly exotic air among his Russian peers. And Semyon Alexander Zolotaryov, the oldest and most mysterious at 38, a last-minute addition, a combat veteran and hiking instructor. Though an outsider, his experience was seen as a valuable asset. Together, they were 10 bright, capable individuals setting out on an adventure they had meticulously prepared for. The expedition was no mere winter camping trip. It was a Category 3 trek, the highest and most difficult classification for a sports route in the Soviet Union. Completing it would elevate the hikers to the top tier of mountaineering prowess. They planned a route across 217 miles of treacherous, uninhabited terrain. It culminated in an ascent of Otterten Mountain. Otterten, Mansi for don't go there, a warning that felt like a challenge. Their route was carefully mapped. Their supplies were methodically calculated. Their spirits were high. They carried high-quality canvas tents, insulated sleeping bags, padded jackets, felt-lined boots built for brutal Siberian cold. Provisions, crackers, condensed milk, sausage, lard. They packed skis, an axe, a small portable stove, a first aid kit. Igor Dyatlov, the leader, ensured every detail was accounted for. He maintained a logbook. Several members kept personal diaries. Those records show an organized, confident team working seamlessly. The journey began on January 23, 1959. They traveled by train and by truck to the logging village of Vizhai, the last outpost of civilization. From there, they were on their own. Early journal entries brim with optimism and good humor. They describe the beauty of the landscape. They joke about minor hardships. On January 28th, the first and only departure occurred. Yuri Yudin struggled with severe joint pain and turned back. His chronic sciatica was aggravated by cold and exertion. He said his goodbyes, wishing his friends luck. He could not know he would be the expedition's sole survivor. 9 hikers continued. They followed the Auspia River Valley. Their diaries show no distress. Their final entries speak of a successful day and plans to establish a base camp on Kholat Shakol's eastern slope. They planned a final push to Otorten. They were on schedule, in good health, and fully prepared. Everything suggested a routine expedition. The weather was harsh, but familiar to them. There was no hint of the unimaginable horror about to unfold. Nearly 4 weeks after the hikers went missing, on February 26th, a search party discovered their final campsite. What they found was not a camp buried by disaster, but a scene of bizarre and hurried abandonment. The group's tent was still standing, but it was empty. Their boots, warm clothing, and supplies were all left behind. The most disturbing detail was how they had exited. Investigators found the tent had been deliberately sliced open with a knife from the inside. It suggested an event so terrifying they couldn't spare the seconds to untie the flap. Leading away from the shredded tent was a trail of footprints. The tracks descended the slope in a relatively straight line, heading toward the distant forest. Most disturbingly, many of the prints were made by bare feet or socks in temperatures well below freezing, a death sentence. Yet the tracks were surprisingly orderly, not scattered. There were no signs of a struggle, and no prints belonging to anyone else. The tracks led them nearly a mile to a large cedar tree at the edge of the forest. Here, they made their first grim discovery. The bodies of Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko were found stripped to their underwear near the remains of a small fire. Branches on the cedar tree above were broken, suggesting a frantic attempt to climb it, either to escape a threat or to get a view of the tent. The search party then found 3 more bodies: Igor Dyatlov, Zenaida Kolmogorova, and Rustem Slobodin, at intervals between the cedar and the tent. Their positions suggested they had been desperately trying to crawl back to their only shelter when they succumbed to the cold. The fate of the final 4 remained a mystery for 2 more months. In May, after the snow began to thaw, their bodies were found in a makeshift snow den in a nearby ravine. They were better dressed, some wearing clothes cut from the first 2 victims. But their injuries were horrific. 3 had suffered massive internal trauma, crushed ribs and fractured skulls, with almost no external wounds. An examiner compared the force required to that of a car crash, and in a final gruesome twist, one of them, Lyudmila Dubinina, was found missing her tongue and eyes. The first and most enduring official theory is that the hikers were victims of an avalanche. A slab of snow on the slope above their tent suddenly gave way in the night. The weight of snow pressing down on the tent would have created a terrifying sense of being buried alive. That would induce immediate panic. The hikers cut their way out from the inside, desperate to escape. They left without proper clothing and equipment. But under closer scrutiny, the theory unravels. The camp was on a slope of only 15 to 20 degrees. That angle is generally not steep enough for a major avalanche. Experienced investigators and mountaineers found no evidence of a recent avalanche. The tent was only partially collapsed by snow accumulated over weeks, not crushed by a slide. The footprints leading away were orderly, not the chaotic scattering you'd expect. It was a walk, not a panicked run. The injuries also pose a major problem for the avalanche theory. The specific injuries in the ravine are hard to reconcile. Massive, symmetrical chest compressions, severe skull fractures, all without significant external soft tissue damage. Another persistent theory, fueled by the Soviet Union's penchant for secrecy, is that the hikers stumbled upon a secret military weapons test. This theory suggests the hikers may have been accidentally killed by the blast wave or concussive force from a parachute mine, a concussion bomb, or some other experimental weapon. This could explain the powerful, internal-only injuries, as a shock wave can pass through the body causing catastrophic damage to organs without necessarily breaking the skin. Supporting this theory are several pieces of circumstantial evidence. Other hiking groups in the region around the same time reported seeing strange orange spheres or lights in the sky, consistent with a rocket launch or aerial explosion. Furthermore, some of the hikers' clothing was later found to have trace levels of radiation. However, the military theory also has significant weaknesses. Investigators at the time found no physical evidence of an explosion at the site. There was no crater, no shrapnel, and no blast-scorched trees or terrain. The orderly footprints leading away from the tent are also hard to explain in the context of a sudden, deafening explosion. One would expect a far more chaotic scene. A more exotic but scientifically grounded theory revolves around the phenomenon of infrasound. The theory posits the unique topography of Kholat Syakhl, combined with the fierce winds of the storm that night, created a powerful, focused beam of infrasound that was directed at the hiker's tent. Exposure to intense infrasound has been documented to cause disturbing physiological and psychological effects. Feelings of intense dread, anxiety, nausea, a sense of a presence, visual distortions. In essence, it can induce a state of pure, irrational terror. This panic would explain why they acted irrationally, cutting their way out of the tent and fleeing without clothes or supplies. Far enough away, the infrasound would have dissipated, and reason returned. This explains the second phase, the realization of their mistake and the desperate attempt by Dyatlov, Kolmogorova, and Slobodin to return to the tent for supplies. However, infrasound cannot, by itself, explain the horrific physical injuries found in the ravine. Infrasound doesn't crush ribs or fracture skulls. More than 6 decades have passed, but the silence on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl remains unbroken. Each explanation resolves one part of the puzzle only to create another. The evidence refuses to fit neatly into any single narrative, leaving a constellation of unanswered questions. If an avalanche was the cause, why were the footprints so orderly? How did it inflict precise and devastating internal injuries without significant external trauma? If a secret military weapon was tested, where is the physical evidence? A crater or shrapnel? If infrasound induced a collective panic, what then caused the bone-shattering injuries in the ravine? And what of the missing tongue of Lyudmila Dubinina? The 9 hikers took their secrets with them, leaving a chilling tableau, a permanent, haunting reminder that some mysteries may never be solved. What really happened that night? Leave your theory in the comments and subscribe for more real unsolved mysteries.